Hello everybody. I thought it was about time that you got to see my beautiful face. Isn't it worth waiting for? My channel's been dormant for quite a long time now, and I think that's an understatement. And I thought that perhaps it was time to set up some new videos for people to look at, but this time nothing whatsoever to do with equipment. What I'm interested in is how we approach our photography. I'm talking here about people who do it for enjoyment, hence the name of the channel, as opposed to professional photographers who have to do it for their income, for their livelihood. Professional photographers have to focus on what the client wants, not what they as a photographer would necessarily prefer to do. Amateurs and keen enthusiasts such as ourselves have the luxury of being able to photograph really whatever we want, as long as our equipment is suitable for that particular subject, whether it be sports or natural history, architecture, people. All these things we can turn our thoughts to, we can aim our cameras at. I'm not at all interested any longer in what equipment you use. I don't care whether you are using a 1930s film camera. I don't care whether you are using the very latest super duper digital SLR or mirrorless, or indeed anything in between. I really don't mind. A lot of the images that you will see are taken on a wide variety of cameras. I will probably let you know what they have been taken on at some stage during each film, but that really is an irrelevance. What people ought to focus on, pardon the pun, is the end result. As long as you have or educate your eyes to see the world photographically, then you are going to gradually, over time, improve your technique, and your photography will benefit from that knowledge. So without further ado, I thought we would kick off by looking at just a few photographs, images that I have taken over the past couple of years on all sorts of equipment, some film, some digital, and to start off with, we'll concentrate rather on images that are monochrome or black and white. So let's get started. So here we are looking out across Liverpool. The skyline I have deliberately placed very low in the frame because the area of interest for me on this particular occasion was the cloud formation. So from that point of view, I decided to put the horizon line very low in the frame and concentrate more on the clouds than anything else. There was a lot of light around, and on this particular occasion I think it was taken with a standard lens, and there was no point in me trying to zoom in or concentrate more on the architectural interest. I decided that I wanted to make Liverpool itself look small against a very large cloudscape. Here, on the other hand, we're talking about a completely different emphasis. We've moved down to the docks area of Liverpool, and once again you can see the Liver buildings in the centre of the frame. And on this occasion I wanted to emphasize the relationship between the Three Graces, the three main buildings on the waterfront here in Liverpool, to the more modern office blocks that have been built in much more recent times. You'll notice that I have gone for a square format. I quite often use a frame around my images to hold the eye in, and the only thing that I've done in post is to slightly darken the upper sky area with a graduated filter. We're still staying in Liverpool city centre, and this was very much a grab shot. The view down this narrow pedestrianised street leads the eye all the way down to one of the towers of the Liver building in the far distance. The exposure latitude was way more than the camera could cope with, and because it was a grab shot on auto exposure metering, the camera has done really a pretty good job, I have to say, at rendering detail in everything apart from the sky itself. What interested me was the way that these people walking away from me down the street were dwarfed by the buildings on either side of them. The fact that I had the Liver building in the far distance was an added bonus, really. But the issue with this particular photograph, because it was taken in such a hurry, a real grab shot, there is far too much in the frame. I don't want the tree, I don't want much of the pavement in the foreground, and it needs a severe crop, and it needs to be given some impact. So the next image that I will show you is one that I worked on in post, and it's transformed it into a keeper. Nothing that's going to win any prizes or competitions. It's not going to get thousands and thousands of likes on Instagram, but nevertheless it's a big improvement over the original shot. So here we are. What did I do? It's a case of homing in on the intent, if you like, of the scene that I saw when I did the initial grab shot. You can probably tell this was taken a few seconds later when the people had moved. They've changed position. But nevertheless, I was still standing in exactly the same position. And so what I've done here is to severely crop the image. You should never be afraid of doing that. Yes, you're going to lose pixels, you're going to lose some quality, but at the end of the day there are ways and means of getting around that. What I decided to do was to, yes, once again go for a square crop. I put a narrow white frame around the edge, and I've really boosted the contrast to ridiculous levels. I didn't feel that it was necessary to keep any detail in the shadows. I wanted as much detail as possible in the highlights, and in cranking up the contrast level we have managed to bring in some detail in the clouds, and the people have now become complete silhouettes, and the overall feel is one of much more drama. I think it emphasizes even more the way that these people are dwarfed by the buildings, and the focal point, if you like, of the overall shot is both the group of figures in the distance and then the Liver building beyond. Now here's something which is relatively boring when you first look at it. You can probably tell straight away, at least I hope you can, if you're thinking photographically, what took my eye and what interested me about this particular subject. And the answer, of course, is the pattern of light and shade on the ground, which is created by the architecture of St George's Hall here in Liverpool. And I was just fascinated by the way that this lone figure was walking towards me, and she was catching the light, or rather the light was catching her hair as she approached. Now, there's lots of things wrong with this. The area of interest for me are the full sort of rhomboid shapes of sunlight you can see on the ground. I don't like the large area of sunlight in the foreground. It's messy and it occupies far too much of the frame. The interest is all in the top half of this image. So yet again, it's a case of, yes, grab the photograph. That's the first thing to do. Then when you get back home, when you look at it on a decent sized monitor, not on the back of your camera, when you look at the images you've taken, that's the time to decide whether it's worth keeping, possibly with a lot of work in post-production, or whether it's one that you should delete straight away. I tinkered around with this one and made quite a few changes, gone down a similar route to the last photograph that you saw, and we will show you the final result now. And there we are. Another square format, square crop. Yes, white frame around the edge, but in doing so we have eradicated that ugly large area of sunlight in the foreground. We've emphasized the figure in the top third of the frame, and with boosting the contrast we've also emphasized the dramatic lighting. Obviously you can argue that the quality has deteriorated more. I have introduced quite deliberately some grain into this image in post-production, but we've transformed an image that perhaps could and should have been binned, deleted, but I thought it was worth saving. It's an unusual arrangement of sunlight and shade, and I think on balance it's one that I'm quite happy with. And to finish off with, I thought I would just show you 3 images of the same place. Escalators and modern architecture can sometimes yield fantastic results for, if you like, street photography or people watching. On this occasion I was going up the escalator, standing a few feet behind this gentleman who was ahead of me, and decided that it would make a good image, vertical format, high contrast, no detail in the shadows, just click, thank you very much, nice and easy. And then when I returned maybe a few weeks later, there was absolutely nobody around. In fact, I think this coincided with the first lockdown, when Liverpool city centre was really, in common with most parts of the United Kingdom, pretty much a ghost town, and there just was nobody around at all. This is the original, albeit JPEG image in colour. There is really so little colour in this image, it's simply not worth keeping it in. So straight away my instinct was to say, yep, I love the geometry, I don't like the colour, and it needs a figure in there somewhere. So what did we do? In common with most photographers, I cheated. Yes, I did a composite. changed the main image to monochrome, boosted the contrast quite a lot, and added a silhouette figure which I had taken previously, goodness knows when or where, and just composited it together to give me the image that I desperately wanted. And I think that it works pretty well. If you can get to the stage of being able to use your editing software confidently enough to do things like this, then it's worth at least considering. I'm not a great believer in composite images per se. There are occasions when they work, and in this particular instance I think this is one of them, but under normal circumstances I'm not usually in favour of comping images together. If you can get the thing done in camera, so much the better, but obviously on this occasion and at this particular time during lockdown I had little alternative. So there you go. That's the image which I have published, and you know, I'm quite happy with that. I think it's definitely worth keeping, and it emphasizes the kind of effect that you can make as long as you keep your eyes thinking photographically. Okay, so there we are. That's the end of my latest video. Please let me know if you would like to see more of the same. I'm, to be honest with you, fed up with the amount of photography channels on YouTube that talk incessantly about equipment and the need for the latest gadget, the latest camera with the most megapixels. I really do not care any longer about that. I'm all about the end result. For interest, the images that you've seen today were taken on a mixture of equipment. Some were taken on Fujifilm X-E2, some were taken with a Nikon F3, some were taken with a Ricoh 500G, some were taken with a Rolleiflex 3.5F, and some were taken on mobile phones. I'll leave you to decide which ones you think were taken on which particular camera. Until the next time, take care, look after yourselves.